Mr. Y is floating. He's thinking 60,000 feet. He's in the stratosphere. The guy is from another realm of thinking. He loves no cars. He loves like vintage Aston Martin cars.
You'll be using this Aston Martin DB5.
I tell him when Kaspa's $3, I'm gonna get you one. Crypto may act a little faster, but the Warren Buffett saying, markets are a mechanism for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. There's something else that has to do with the bull runs of crypto than just the Bitcoin halving. It can't be that simple. So there's still 20 billion coins that we have no idea who owns them.
Are you still talking to Binance?
And then you have these people like the wallet number one, Entity X. Whoever that is, they have patience. They get the game of markets overall in crypto. They just bought 5 more million coins today.
Supported by Igra Labs, atomic programmability on a Kaspa blog tag. Cascade. Use your Kaspa without selling it.
I've got here with me Wolfie. Wolfie, good to see you. How you been?
Woohoo! Wolfie's doing good over here in California. Thanks for inviting me back. We had a lot of fun and we got a lot of views last time, so it's good to be invited back. It's flattering. It's an honor. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I think we had a good time. We were just discussing before this recording that, it was over an hour. And I think we still get a lot of views from that episode. And especially new Kaspa comers that are coming and learning about Kaspa. I think they go watch the show and then obviously comment. We still get comments. So thanks for that. But let me do a quick intro for anyone who's new here, right? Now, as I said, I doubt there's anyone in the Kaspa community who doesn't know you already. Right. But for anyone new here who's going to come later on, you're the guy that has helped Kaspa early days with a lot of Kaspa exchange listings, right? A true Kaspa OG. And one of the most passionate voices in the space advocating for Kaspa. That's you, for anyone who doesn't know you. Now, Wolfie, today I would like to go over 2 core topics, right? So I want to discuss with you macro cycle. I think I started to do a lot of short form content because I think in 2026, macro is as important as technology, understanding about the technology, right? And the second part is obviously your favorite topic, which is we're going to get into Kaspa, especially the new upgrade hard fork that's coming up and rest of the detail that we're going to get into. So let me start with this one, right? So, Bitcoin went to 125K last October around that time. Now down to 66, 67K, right? Where do you personally see crypto right now in the overall crypto cycles?
Yeah, so it's very tricky, very, very tricky. We've had this 4-year cycle thing since pretty much the beginning with Bitcoin, and then the alts followed suit as they came out in the early teens, right, of the 20 teens. And so it seemed like the 4-year cycle and the idea that it was based on the halving, the Bitcoin halving, and the supply's cut in half. And then there's this supply shock and everyone goes crazy and they have to pay twice as much because there's hardly any Bitcoin coming out anymore. That made sense back then. It did make sense. But then there have been people, I think Raoul Pal started off the concept that it may be back lurking behind the curtains of the stage, there were some deeper underlying workings of the financial system, like liquidity and the manufacturing index and different things that you can look at. That maybe crypto is just this wild risk on casino, like turbo, squared mode risk on thing. So there's these things like the copper gold chart. When that one breaks out, which it is right now, it shows, manufacturing's going on. Businesses aren't shrinking. They're buying copper to make things that take wire and motors and everything, right? And then you also have like things like the manufacturing index, like we mentioned. So that's that. So when the guys who are on that side of the table line up the 4-year charts of copper and the PMI and all this stuff and the business cycle expanding and contracting, it happens to magically sync up with the 4 years up until just about 5 years ago. So when you look at those charts now, you can see that like alts have been in a kind of a downtrend, or a sideways trend for a long time, much
Yeah.
longer. So they didn't even catch their alt season at all yet still. So I would tend to side a little more with, there's something else that has to do with the bull runs of crypto than just the Bitcoin halving. It can't be that simple anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But nevertheless, as the guys like I just watched one yesterday when the price was down, and I'm like, all right, maybe this guy's right. Everything's going down till October. I guess he's right. And then Kaspa went beep and
Just
popped
went
back.
out.
He's wrong. Yeah, he's wrong. Yeah. So you never, yeah.
You just don't know, right? You just don't know. I think, but I think, I think exactly as you say, right? This cycles concept. I personally never liked the cycles concept, even though they've been, come true. But I remember I went to 2024 Bitcoin halving event, and a lot of people were saying now Bitcoin, I think it was trading at 64 around that time. Everyone was like, it's going to go to 125, 124, double, right? It did double, but back down. So I've personally been skeptical in, some ways of halvings. But I guess the question back to you, people are talking about it constantly. This phase, we had that phase. People are accumulating big whales, these ETFs, Ethereum, Bitcoin, some Solana, right? There's a lot of ETFs have come over last year and a half, right? IBIT and Bitcoin front is the biggest one. So where do you see we are in the overall cycle?
That's the same tricky answer there. I mean, it's tough to say. Like the Bitcoin people like say like boomers. I'm not a boomer. I might look almost like a boomer, but
You do not look. You look very young.
if I was 6 months older, I'd be a boomer, but I just escaped from being a boomer. That's why I'm in crypto. That's why I understand it, because I'm not a boomer. But some of those guys might have gotten tricked into buying the the higher prices of Bitcoin just on their stock trading account, buying the I shares, I bid or whatever, the Fidelity version or the BlackRock version or the Kathy Woods version of the thing, and then they see these scary headlines and like Michael Saylor sold 32, and they sell, they get scared, They think, oh my God, even the biggest guy who believes in it in the world is selling now. It must be bad news. But in reality, that was nothing. That was like a joke. Like that was like putting Bitcoin in the parking meter for Sailor's yacht or something. It's not 32 points. That's not a
Yeah,
big deal.
that's tiny. That's tiny. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I think markets, guys like Warren Buffett, and these old trading chart guys that wrote the famous chart books from the 40s and the 50s, like markets don't really change. So you get new markets, but they all behave the same. Crypto may act a little faster, but the Warren Buffett saying, markets are a mechanism for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. So the people, we have our Kaspa fans, like the diehard Kaspa people. Like if it goes to a penny, they're not tripping. They're stoked because their paycheck and their things they can sell every month to buy coins. Then they can get more coins. They believe in it for a long, long time. They're not selling. They're not tripping. They're not panicking at all. And then you have these people like the wallet number one, Entity X, whoever that is. They have patience. They get the game of markets overall in crypto. They just bought 5 more million coins today. That helped out, that with sentiment overall, but like those people and the unknowns, there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 of them, like with 500 million coins, 1 billion coins, VCs, hedge funds, whoever they are, exchanges, market makers. But they just split it out over different addresses in their wallets. So these guys aren't tripping. They know crypto's going to have its day again. And when it does, the historically, the projects with the loudest communities always go crazy in price also, and popularity. If we have 10,000 people on Twitter right now, or 50,000 people on Twitter right now, when the price goes back to all-time high, or 10 cents, I mean, we're going to have 200,000 people. It's just going to go bonkers. So these people know the game, and so that's why for the long, I'm not scared for decent crypto projects, and of course including Kaspa.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is complicated for an average person who's not watching and looking at the charts every day, who's not looking at the market. It's hard because there's so much happening, right? There's like on one side we're constantly seeing, right? All the indexes like S&P and Nasdaq, they're hitting all-time highs, right? It's been consistent thing, right? On the other hand, we have these global conflicts every now and then in Middle East, Europe, Eastern Europe, sort of pushing the energy prices up and global disruption, blah, 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 right? And then same time, you have countries like burning through their reserve piles of USD, right? Global liquidity issues, and you constantly see that across New Zealand, Australia, Canada, France, Germany, like countries are struggling, right? How do you make sense of this?
Well, I guess I'm fortunate to have been. I was never a traditional finance guy. I don't have any background in charts and finance or anything, but I've been looking at them every single day since 2017, pretty much. When I got back into crypto and back into altcoins. So I know that whatever happens now, like in 5 years, when you look back, it's a flat line. Whatever you think is a big deal, a big up or a down for 5 years ago is like, usually it's flat now, on the coins that really make it: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. Kaspa's been out 4 years. But if you look at the first, year, even on CoinMarketCap of Kaspa, when you zoom in just on it, it looks like, oh my God, it went up a giant mountain. Oh my God, it went all the way down. Now, when you look at that whole thing, now you see the big mountain of going to 20 cents and back down to 3 cents, but looking from half a penny to 1.4 cents and down to a penny is like a nothing, So whatever feels like a big deal today, probably in the big picture isn't a huge deal. And there's like the global politics and the war. Whenever the war's about to be hit the pause button, the war is turned off today, then the price goes up, and then the war, no, I'm just kidding, it's back on. And then, so someday that's going to dissipate. However, it could be in a couple of weeks, or it could be in a year, or somehow it's going to fizzle out and things will flow again. Life definitely goes on. And then as for like being a little older and being having a little patience, right? Like we were talking about, like if you looked at like Near and Hype in the beginning of the week, like everything was getting crushed, and Hype was up 59% or something, and like, dude, there's people that sold Kaspa to buy Hype, but then now, like probably yesterday, they sold the Kaspa to buy Hype, and then Hype went down, or it's sideways, and then Kaspa came back 12%, and all kinds of things like that. People like, there's another saying I heard just from some finance guy a long time ago, years, not that long ago, but 5 years, 8 years ago. And it's a simple thing. Like the first day in economics, they teach you like parabolic growth is unsustainable. That's what they say. Like there's no way something goes straight up forever. It's impossible. Right. So like the AI stocks and Nvidia and stuff, like, I guess they could grind up for a long time, but like parabolic, there's a difference between grinding up over like 10 years and like going straight up the wall. Like that type of stuff doesn't last forever. In 1929, I'm not a historian. One last thing, like I didn't study history. I didn't study too much of anything in school, but I saw YouTube about the 1929, the stock market crash. I saw like a month ago, and it was strangely like how it is now. Like people were buying stocks on credit because they thought they could only keep going up, and that could be a true thing that's going on a little bit right now. AI is magnificent, but I don't know if it's like going to solve everything forever.
No, I think, I mean, I've spent a lot of time actually learning about 1929, what happened in the stock market. Closer example would be 2000s with dot-com bubble. I think just because everyone thought internet any app on the internet, pet.com, or anything that, these companies will keep going up and up and up and up. And they did for some time, right? And then obviously the crash came down after the crash of 2000. So who knows, but I think, yeah, I do agree on the sentiment. So let's move forward, right? So you're in US, right? You're in US. There's a lot of regulatory stuff happening in US. So one thing I wanted to ask you, again, carrying on that macro theme, is, this bill that's been discussed heavily over last maybe 6 or 8 months, the Clarity Bill. Right now, it's advancing to the full Senate vote, right? So, can you give us a sense of what Clarity Bill is and how perhaps it affects Kaspa?
Sure. So, yet another topic that I'm not formally educated on is the law.
That's good. That's good.
So, but anyway, I just did a little digging over the last year and a half when it's been on Twitter and in the news a little bit. So last summer, we had the other one. We had the Genius Act, which was all about the
stable coin. Yeah.
Now, this is annoying to me because I like to be like, all right, this is that category and it's handled already. Now let's get down to the category, which of course came second, that actually benefits me, which is the Clarity Act is supposed to be about commodities, which one's a commodity and which one's a security. That was always my understanding. Somehow, though, the banks with Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, Chase, those guys are fighting with Coinbase, and they both want to, make all the money off of the staking. Well, they both want to, it's all about the interest on staking, stables. So that's the thing that's causing all the delays is stable coins. Again, in the bill, that's not supposed to really be about stable coins. So that part annoys me. But the part that concerns things like Kaspa, Bitcoin already is grandfathered in as itself, since it is the granddaddy of them all. It's already been, I guess, declared a commodity in some sense or another. So, but for other types of projects that are, younger and a little bit more obscure, like Kaspa and some of the other ones that are proof of work and or fair launch and some type of decent project that's not started by a corporation, those ones should get the stamp that those are a commodity, which means those are then permanently relegated to the discretion or the jurisdiction of the CFTC, which is Commodities Something Free Trade blah 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 Commission. I don't know how I made that part up, but and then we all know the one we really know that is the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. We know that, right? So those guys, that was the famous, remember the guy we don't like, the war on crypto guy who's not there. Yeah, Gary Gensler. He's probably an okay guy. If I saw him at a restaurant or, passing by in a boat, hey, Gary, yeah, how's it doing? I wouldn't be mad at him, but, he's just doing his job. But, it would prevent the SEC moving forward for good for having any ability to sue blockchain projects that were especially decentralized ones. So it'll be the framework that describes which type are forever out of the jurisdiction of the SEC and regulated instead by the CFTC, which is what you want to be, a commodity like oil, pork bellies, gold, like good stuff you can hold in your hand and it goes up and down in price. That's what coins are to me, real coins. So not securities. You're not buying it with a promise as an investment, a promise of a return. You're buying it because it's like a hard asset and it changes in price over time. And of course, you hope it goes up. Sometimes it goes down, but then eventually it goes up more.
Yeah. But and yeah, I think there's so much within this bill, right? And you covered a lot of, actually, even though you're saying you don't know, but there's a lot that you've covered off. And there's, it started from one thing, this bill, but it obviously eventually got stuck because of a different thing altogether, right? Which was the stablecoin yield, right? Stablecoin yield. And there's a compromise there now, right? How yields are not okay for crypto companies, exchanges mostly, but they can do rewards, right?
Reward.
So they can do rewards, right? Things like the staking rewards. That's okay for Ethereum, right? They can do that, but yield on the stable coins is not okay. But I guess coming to Kaspa, like, do you see it will do anything for Kaspa from a US regulatory standpoint?
I can just assume, or I could just have a hunch that it would, once it was absolute certainty, legally certain that something like Kaspa in the top 100, that's a fair launch proof of work, was a commodity, then it should be easier for it to get listed on like CBOE futures or CME futures. Yeah, like real traditional finance futures forms, things like that. And then maybe even go as far as if cryptos really start being traded on the stock market, which I think I heard they are soon. Like, the top dogs go first, Bitcoin, ETH, then probably Solana, and then down the ladder a little more, Tau will get on there probably, and things like that. And then, hopefully eventually we ratchet our way back up the coin market cap ladder and are able to begin appearing on some of these traditional finance places in the future.
Yeah, yeah. So there's so much happening in that space, man. But I think it's great to perhaps just touch upon these topics with you, given your knowledge.
Yeah.
But let's move forward, right? Let's talk about our favorite topic, Kaspa. There's so much happening in Kaspa. So where do you want to start? Should we start with obviously the hard fork that's coming up? Tell us what's happening in the hard fork. Obviously, lots of exciting stuff bundled in.
Okay, so this is going to be a funny answer. Okay, so it's called Toccata. Toccata sounds like Italiano kind of a name, and it
Hey,
has
do
a
you know where
lot.
the name came? Sorry, Wolfie, do you know where the name came from? Toccata.
I have a hunch that it may be some musically based thing. Like, Crescendo was the one about a year ago, and a Toccata, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
You get right.
I'm only as Italian as I am from being a New Yorker, but genetically I'm not Italian. But Toccata is the name of this fork, and it's a big deal. It has a lot of things wrapped up in, I guess, KIP 21, Kaspa Improvement Proposal, and I know the guys have been geeking out hardcore for months and months and months, and so there's a lot of things it brings to the table. What they exactly are, I know vaguely what some of them are, but this is why it's going to be a funny answer, because I don't know. So that means it's good, because if I knew, that would mean it would be simple, something I heard about before that some other network can do, and it's not. So that means it's good because I don't get it. Some very simple examples that I do know are like the Covenants Plus Plus. This is a new feature that's going to be running on the L1. So like, supposing like I was a boomer and I had a pile of coins, and I had, I was unhealthy or something, I could activate like a dead man switch on my wallet, right? So I have my pile of coins, and then if I don't touch that wallet, that address doesn't move for 2 years, say, then they automatically send to my daughter's address. So that's a pretty cool thing. I don't know of anybody else that does that, especially on the L1. There could be smart contracts, but smart contracts get jacked. You're relying on a software layer, and there's this guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name is Kim Jong-un. Do you know this guy? He has this little cozy nest right there, right above South Korea. And apparently he has this hotshot team of hackers and crackers, and they try to pop into stuff all the time. They have more coins than Coinbase, probably. So anyway, those guys, they're always looking for an exploit, a vulnerability. So if you have things in a smart contract, it's not guaranteed that it won't get exploited at some time. But on the L1 with the Covenants Plus Plus, those things are locked in. You can't fake it unless he would have to make more ASIC miners for Kaspa than there already are on the network right now, and turn them all on and do his own fork, and that's quite less likely. So that's one kind of cool thing you can do. There's other things you can do, like you can just have a whitelist of addresses. Like, I'm only allowed to send to my daughter's address, a Kraken address, my phone's Caspium on my phone wallet address, and that's it. These coins can't be sent to anywhere else. They can't go to the Russian hackers. They can't go to the hackers in North Korea. They can't go to anywhere else, nowhere else. So that's kind of, then the other category, there's ZK prover, ZK something enable. And I don't know that will what will be the use cases of that exactly. Sir Sutton explained to me about a year ago what zero knowledge proofs are overall. I can tell a very brief description. So there's some like a law or principle of computing and mathematics and maybe something software or whatever that says it's like, I think it's an older one, and it says so it's before zero knowledge proofs came out, and it says if something was complicated to calculate, then it has to be complicated to prove, to verify, right? So like if I tell you like count all the red cars in your country, right? It would take you a while. And then for me to prove it, I'd have to go there and count them all too, or somehow watch the movie of you running around the whole country and doing it. It would be a pain in the ass for me also, not just you. But the zero knowledge thing is kind of like you set the rules of what the job is. I give you the rules, think, and then you check them off as you go, and then it gives like you get like a little certificate of completion that you followed the rules. So then you send the little certificate of completion to the Kaspa network, and it goes, oh, he followed the rules, and it's true. Ding, like check mark, like it's true. So you could have done like a really complicated something, some type of transaction or loan or something, and then you just submit that it's true, and then there's just a tiny bit of data on the Kaspa network and no computing. Like in Ethereum and a lot of the EVMs, like every single smart contract has to be calculated by every single node. They all have to do it to make sure it's true. But in the case of what we're talking about here, only your machines and your systems do what they do. And then they just send the little dink check mark, and it's a done deal. So that's pretty neat. I don't know what that can turn into, but it's pretty neat stuff. And I'm sure they didn't add it in there for the fun of it. So
No.
see what comes up, what can happen.
You have a good way to explain, Wolfie. So it's great the way you explain. Sometimes technical knowledge or technical language becomes complicated for a lot of people. I mean, for me, what's exciting is obviously Covenant, I think, is the key one. Plus plus is obviously the ZK part, which is great. But I think ZK will evolve over time. It's really, how the layer 2s become ZK based rollups rather than just the base rollups that are there right now. But I think Covenant is the key one, which I'm really excited by, because I think it's going to open up a lot of programmability on the layer 1 itself. These pending rules that can be done on coins, as you explained, in many ways. Have you spoken to the core team or anyone in the team, or even other builders that's telling you the type of application they're going to build on top of it?
No, not so much. I did see a new wallet was coming out. I saw somebody on Twitter, they mentioned like a new wallet that will be coming out that has the Covenants plus plus stuff ready, or it's at least in mind to begin creating something. Right. So that's neat. I don't bug the core guys. I think if I have to, I've famously described, well, I don't know about famously, but I always think of, like, for example, Mr. Y's natural state. Like I had a Zoom this morning with a nice kid. He was trying to connect me with a large company that he knows somebody that works there. So I told him my natural state is thinking about nothing. Like I have to pay attention to start thinking about something. And I'm usually thinking about zero, like just blank, floating along. And then if something gets my attention, I start thinking about it. But Mr. Y and those guys, Mr. Y is floating. He's thinking 60,000 feet. He's in the stratosphere. His thoughts are above people that you're ever going to be in a restaurant with or ever sit in the same next to on the plane. The guy is from another realm of thinking. And so to make him reel in all the way down, come back down to the ground so he can listen to my nonsense, I feel bad about making him cruise all the way down here just to talk to me about nonsense. So I don't bug him too often. Once in a while we chat, and talk about cars, believe it or not, once in a while. He loves like vintage Aston Martin cars, so someday I tell him when Kaspa's $3, I'm gonna get you one. Yeah, if you get a big crate from shows up from California one day. No.
All right. Let's talk about cars. So what cars do you like? What cars does he like, or he's told you that he likes? bikes.
Yeah. So yeah, he's the vintage Aston Martin. So I can only imagine somehow he may have gotten this. I believe his his family originally was from Denmark. So it may have been that European. Or maybe most people. I don't know if he was ever into James Bond movies in the old days. He likes like 50s and 60s Aston Martins. So that's it. I've showed him other cars, other really good looking cars. He's like, nope, I can't cheat on my Aston Martins. I'm like, yeah, it's not for, I can't even look, you know?
I
Yeah.
see. I see.
Yeah. I like cars myself too.
What about? I thought he would say something like, electric cars because it's about planets and it's about the technology. Those things are beautiful, but he's more
Sure.
into his vintage Aston Martin.
Hmm. Yeah. So he's a curious guy. He's not intimately connected with worldly possessions on any level that I've been able to really see, other than I think he can feel the beauty of the art of those old cars. It touches him somehow, but not too many things do that are just from the material world that I've ever witnessed, from him.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. It's good to get some insights from yourself and obviously get to know Jonathan. I've invited him a couple of times on the show, but I think it's probably too busy. But I'm sure we'll get
Yeah,
him on one day.
sure.
So just carrying on, I guess. Yeah. So coming back to Toccata, anything on the Toccata that makes you like, hey, this is gonna be game changer for Kaspa. There's gonna be game changer for proof of work, in itself.
Sure. So, not to be a disappointing person, on a disappointing note, but, they say, building quality things takes time. And I think I've heard it, described that this is like, stage one of a two-part process, or even stage two of a 3 or 4 part process. So Toccata it gets us to the next story in the building, but then there's another story after that, which would be like the Vprogs and things like that. So Toccata is awesome. It's definitely a huge milestone, and it enables technical features. But it's also setting the stage for the next level also, which I guess is slated for like next fall, so not too far away. It's another thing that we need to, will be worked on next, and that's going to open up a lot more things like the Vprog stuff. So, but this one's cool. It's awesome, and I do believe we have a lot of sharp people that have been popping up over the last year from around the world that aren't the core guys that are making these things like Kaz Play, the games on there, and what was that, the little messaging apps and the different stuff. So there's sharp people starting to watch and make their own stuff. So I'm thinking of it more like a little scratch off lottery ticket, like hey, let's see what comes out of it. I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I know it's gonna work, because it's from our boys. And also, one other side note, I think they're increasing the minor fees a teeny bit on this one, at least a teeny bit. If it may be much more, like it may be multiples more, but it's still not a huge amount. It's not going to be like 10 coins for a transaction, but it's going to add up to filling up blocks. So blocks will pay, more with because of transactions. So that's good too. I don't know the exact amount.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I think it's good to not get into technical because it gets very technical, and
Sure.
I think perhaps we need the right people to discuss those technical stuff, what's been actually deployed. So let's see who comes on the show. But I think what you highlighted on a very high level is very important for people to understand at least what's happening, and the way you explain is actually very beautiful. So thank you. So let's move forward, right? So now, obviously, Toccata is going to be out on the 30th. I think that's the day the mainnet it'll go into the mainnet. And perhaps one thing I wanted to ask you is your take, as I explained early on. You're the Kaspa OG, right? There's obviously core that's working on Toccata, and obviously going to be Vprogs whenever Vprogs come out. And then there's obviously a lot of things are happening on the layer 2 side, right? The projects like Cosplex, IGRA, lots
Mhm.
of builders. So what's your take, about the layer 2 ecosystem that's actually getting developed, alongside the core?
Sure, sure. So, first of all, you mentioned the two that we know of that are the the two like EVM platforms, right? And it's neat, and to me, there's always room for two of in anything. You have Pepsi and Coke, you have Burger King, McDonald's, whatever. There's always room, right? Some people like this flavor, some people like that flavor. I think they're both making up cool stuff. I saw that CasCAD the loan platform. I probably wouldn't try any loan platform myself because I would have fear of liquidation only, not so much because of this, that, or the other, not because of the people or the network or the anything like that. It would be more just the concept that I wouldn't be comfortable doing it myself. But nevertheless, it's neat to see a use case like that. And then I don't know if you probably don't dig this deep because but on Twitter or something, but there's this tiny there's a little coin that somebody made after my cat. So the famous cat Nacho, that's Shy's cat. So there's been a Nacho KRC20 token for at least like a year and a half, I think, right? So then somebody went and made one on a Casplex their Cas.fund. So it's like a pump.fund on Casplex. So they're Jonso, it's JNSO. So there's a tiny little cat coin out there, and they voted for me to be the boss of it somehow a couple weeks ago, which makes sense because I know all the exchange people, so it makes sense that they voted for me. Like, so who knows?
I thought you were a lover of cats. That's why they made you the boss.
Yeah, we had a bunch of cats. We had a bunch, and then we had to donate some to the grandma reservation out there a little bit further into the desert. When we moved into a house where it was only, it was really only appropriate to have one. So the cat that's my avatar, that's Jonso. So yeah, that's who the token is of. Yeah. So probably that guy's gonna appear some places, and one place we believe we're gonna have him appear. So you guys are a media company, right? XXIM. You have a great YouTube channel. So I've had casmedia.com going as a website. It was originally intended to be like the Bitcoin magazine for Kaspa, and it's been exclusively Kaspa for about 2 years now. Now, recently we've decided to branch it out, and we're going to begin covering other projects and other stuff, maybe a little AI stuff, some traditional finance stuff, market, overall stuff, and branch out into entertainment a little bit. We're going to be getting some of our Hollywood connections going, and probably, well, not probably, we definitely are. So the neat thing is with those connections, we may be able to slip a little bit of Kaspa symbolisms or t-shirts or something in somewhere in the next year or two. So
Awesome.
That's kind of cool. If we have a paywall for certain features or some products like t-shirts or something cool, like some real crypto specific, like punk rock kind of cool, like Southern California t-shirts or merchandise on casmedia.com, we'll probably have Jonso added. We'll have Kaspa. We'll accept Kaspa, of course, maybe Stables, and then Jonso will be a token that you can use to buy something cool. I want to make an Atom blocked t-shirt. So it'll be like a punk rock flyer from like this, like LA or New York City in the 80s, like where you have like the cutout letters, like the Sex Pistols and all kinds of stuff, but it'll be like Atom blocked with the laser beam eyes and like some of the other Bitcoin maxi haters. And then it'll have Mr. Y rocking the mic on stage, or I don't know, something crazy like that. Making like a special, like limited edition 100 t-shirts, Atom blocked, right? And then Kaz fam on the back or something silly. I have wild ideas. That's when I pay attention. When my brain finally wakes up, I think of great stuff like that.
Yeah, I know that's great. I think I'd see, I guess, natural evolution is happening, perhaps even for Cost Media, right? So that's great. Just coming back to, I guess, the question: do you think overall layer 2's ecosystem, Kaspa, Sigra, is sort of going to help? Again, Kaspa has all the properties to be a successful chain, but for that to happen, it has to have adoption. And I think these layer 2s are definitely pushing on the adoption side.
Yeah. So I think they open up, potential use cases, like things like memes and then other like little games and cool stuff that you can do because of the faster block time and things like that. Um, I'm not so sure if like the EVM concept that they both use at the moment is going to be, there's so much EVM competition that to figure out the killer app with that's an EVM thing when almost anyone can do an EVM, it's a very tough job. It doesn't mean that they both can't do it or one of them might pull it off. I have no idea what it could be, but at least they're doing their homework and doing the grind. And when the whole market comes back, I'm sure they'll both capture a successful amount of traffic and everything. I would be more interested on like Mr. Y has been speaking of coordination markets. We were talking about prediction markets just before, but then apparently there's a whole nother category of something that's possible called a coordination market. And I don't get what that really is either, but he does, which is the important part. And I think that's something that can be built, and maybe he's gonna raise some money and have a studio to be able to construct that killer app, and that can be a killer app for Kaspa. And whether the other two each go or one of them goes, and I don't know how they can like I don't get the technology at all. So when Vprogs come out, I don't know if they're gonna like kind of slip and convert over their thing to like also being that, or gonna add Vprogs will add functionality to the smart contracts of the EVM layer twos. I don't know anything about that really, so I can't comment, but I'm sure like if there's any way it's beneficial that they'll add in those capabilities, and maybe it'll make them better EVMs than the regular guy EVMs that we're competing with, that both of them are competing with. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I think EVM is just one part, though. It's more create real programmable layer, but I think the main part is the base layer. And obviously,
Yeah.
there's a lot of debate on the base layer, but end of the day, it's Kaspa that's underpinning the consensus part of these
Sure.
both Igra and Cosplex, right? They are reliant on the layer one fully.
Sure.
They cannot operate without the layer one. So, and again, I think these are narratives that are important. Like, from a core perspective, they need to be honest to the core. And obviously, layer two's perspective, they are saying, well, we are building, entire base is built on the layer one. So what are we discussing here? I think it's good that they are at least trying. Layer twos, they're spending a lot of money, effort,
They
time,
really are. And I mean, let's just be let's be realistic here. Kaspa's 4 years old now, 4.5 years old. If all you could do in the last 4.5 years with Kaspa is just me send coins to you, you send them to somewhere another guy, and then that guy sends them to somewhere else. If that's all you could do for 4.5 years, it would be a little boring. You can do a lot of things with Kaspa and interacting with the network already, and we hope that's going to grow. We expect it to grow. It is growing, and both layer twos. My opinion is that anybody who wants to construct anything that interacts and brings more people to the awareness of Kaspa, the underlying coin and the network, is fine with me. So so good for those guys. They're doing something. There's a lot of complainers that are doing nothing, and those guys are both doing something. So good for them.
So I want to get into one sensitive topic, a little bit sensitive, one sensitive topic for today, and then I want to have a wrap-up question with you after that. So, I guess, I call it sensitive because Kaspa is decentralized, yet we don't have full visibility on what's happening, on the Kaspa core side. So I wanted to ask you perhaps if you have any understanding or visibility, if Kaspa core team is funded properly, right? If they even have the funds available to function to get to Vprogs. And, I'm not causing any stir. It's, coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of, understanding. I've run businesses. If it's pure voluntary energy, it cannot go forever. Right? Eventually it comes down.
Sure. So we do know, like you mentioned, decentralized. That means if you're a new listener and new to crypto, that means the project started from scratch with no money. And that means they don't have money to pay for things like the people to keep working on the software. So that's what happened with Bitcoin. And that's also how Kaspa was started. So historically, we crowdfunded things. We first crowdfunded for the Rust rewrite. That one happened already. So that money was used to pay for the meaningful lines of code. Then there was a second crowdfund for the Dag Knight one. So that one, Dag Knight hasn't been constructed yet. So that one, as far as I know, should be still sitting there for a future date of payout. Whether they, I don't know what they did, but it should be still sitting there in the wallet. I'm one of the signers, so as far as I know, it's that one's still sitting there. Aside from that, the core, to some extent, the actual guys have some this, some that, and they've been hiring some other developers. They're on thin money for hiring extra people, from what I understand, but they're all right for this month. They're all right for right now. And then KEF, the Kaspa Ecosystem Foundation, has hired other guys like the Hans Moog guy. That guy's a wizard. So KEF has been paying for that guy to write some code. And then, so you have the ones that we've always known about, like Ori and Sutton, writing code. And then we have these new hired guns. There's a few of them. And then some of them also make some pay from the meaningful lines of code from the crowd funds, either previously Rust and moving into DK. I guess some will come from there. Now, this brings me into a curious, this is something I just want to tell for the whole Kaspa community, because this is something I'm always wondering. This is like a metric or just an idea. So right now, we just checked before the show because we were both curious about this, but how many Kaspa coins are in existence? How many Kaspa coins have already been mined? The answer is almost just about 27.5 billion coins. So that means that's how many are in circulation, pretty much. And from all the OG whales I know, and the entities like mining manufacturers and just big boppers that have coins, I know of probably about 2 billion coins, right? So 27 minus 2, that leaves us at 25 billion. Then maybe we can say that the next 5 billion off the 25 billion, next 5, that might be all the coins on exchanges. When you look at the MEXC wallet, the Gate wallet, the Qcoin wallet, the Kraken wallet, the Uphold wallet, all of those guys, maybe that's 5 billion, right? That leaves 20 billion coins that we have. And now also, let me mention that in that 5 billion from exchanges, that probably includes everyone on Twitter and everyone on Telegram. Even if not, like those exchanges might be 3.5 billion or 4 billion, and there's a billion coins max on crypto Twitter or CasFam that they self custody, and it's not on exchanges. So there's still 20 billion coins that we have no idea who owns them. Now we know there's that entity X wallet number 1 has 1.4 billion coins, right? We don't know who it is, but there's other entity X's, I'm sure, that spread out their coins across multiple addresses, and they're just not visible that easily. But the point is, if any of these entities, these whales, would like to contribute a tiny percentage of their bag to help the rest of their bag go up and become, extensive software, they should really do it. If they'd like to remain anonymous, they can create a junk email address or whatever they want. They can email me. It's ww@kaspa, KASPA.org. Just email w@kaspa.org. If you have 100 million coins, if you have 500 million coins, if you have 2, 3, 5, 10 billion coins, whatever you have, it could be Bitmain, it could be an exchange, it could be a VC, it could be a hedge fund, it could be an OG Bitcoin whale from 2011 that has 10,000 or 20,000 Bitcoins, and he bought, a 250 million Kaspa or 500 million Kaspa. If you want to kick in 1 million coins, you want to kick in 5 or 10 million, it sounds like a lot to the regular kid that's 20 years old that's working in a coffee shop and trying to just buy 1,000 coins this month. But for people that have 10,000 Bitcoins, or a guy, whatever, a hedge fund with $50 billion, it's not that much. It's not that much at all. So, if you want to help your bags, like seriously, now would be a good time to do it.
For me, a good project without funding for a long time is equally useless, right? I mean, that's how I see it, right? But yeah, I think it's important we discuss these topics as well.
Sure, yeah, it's reasonable. And one more thing, like, right now, crypto's ultra depressed. Even Bitcoin's been dipping like mad. Kaspa had a little pop today. This is we're on Wednesday right now. So if the show comes out on Thursday or Friday and we're back down again, don't get mad at me. But yeah. But Kaspa had a good little bounce today, which is cool. But like, there's a difference between paying for something with 2.8 cent Kaspa and 3.2 cent Kaspa. I mean, even just that little tiny, so like when Kaspa was 20 cents or 15 cents, buying something, if what you're paying for stuff with is Kaspa, which is what most Kaspa people have most of their wealth in, they may have some Bitcoin, they may have some other stocks or whatever, but most Kaspa people have Kaspa, So when it's 3 cents to pay for a monthly expenses with 3 cent Kaspa, it's much more painful than paying for it with 6 cents Kaspa. And, and even less painful if you have 9 cent Kaspa. And if you have 15 cents Kaspa or 20 cents Kaspa, you're in heaven, So I think even in the bear case, the 4-year plan, everything's supposed to quit going down at least by October. And look, we're ready. We have June, July, August, September, and then all of a sudden it's October. So even if we're still going down for 4 months somehow, the end of it's supposed to be, if magically the 4-year thing is still working, then the end of it's in 4 months anyway. So it's either gonna be a slow, a little bit sad summer and just touch grass and go to the beach or whatever, or it's gonna be surprise. The 4-year cycle's not really happening. The Clarity Act could start progressing, the war in Iran could end, and stocks could roll over a little, and some people might buy crypto with some of the profits. That could easily happen, or it could just keep going down. The war could keep going, and AI could keep ripping somehow, and people just lose faith in crypto, and it just goes down until the self-fulfilling prophecy of the 4-year thing comes back. There may be just like half of crypto Twitter may just go, I'm not touching anything until October. And then they all come rushing back in October. It's time, ding, 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 ding. And they start buying. Like, that could happen too. Who knows? Maybe by now it's only a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's not, even mildly founded in the Bitcoin halving and the scarcity of it, So I don't know, but we'll see though, for sure.
You keep it real. I think it's good to discuss both sides, right? Like, no one knows where we're heading. But it's good to at least set some expectation on both sides, right? Either can happen. So let me ask you this closing question. You stirred the Kaspa community last time about your discussion with Binance. So let me ask you this: are you still talking to Binance are you still talking to them till today?
Sure. So the same listing people that I had historically been speaking with, I don't think that lady loves me too much anymore because after a while, after 2.5 years or whatever of working on getting the wallets going for them and everything, and then asking for the 3%, I just wanted to let everyone know, because everyone was Binance-ing me for like 2 years and change, and I had to let them know, like, when Binance is when we give them 3% of the supply at that time. However, they didn't love that so much. They're not talking to me so much anymore, but they're talking to other people. And I went to San Jose a couple of weeks ago to it was what's it called? Easy Labs. Easy Labs is Binance research. So I went to something at the Computer History Museum up there. And I met some top people up there just to introduce myself and just to get to know them and check in as Kaz Media with them, and just try to connect the dots a little bit. Now there was something very interesting, however, that just popped up on Twitter, and I think you saw it as well as myself. So Juni JH from KEF, he's the president of KEF. He proposed a prediction market about Binance listing Kaspa, and he proposed that, like, the community could buy no's, like, is Binance going to list Kaspa like this year, and then everybody buys no, and then if the stacks up high enough, Binance could swoop in and buy the yes, and to make it come true, they would have to turn on spot trading. So that's a great idea. I mean, that may be the most realistic approach, because it's going to take some type of payment, which I guess, it's their platform. They built it. They made it successful, and they have a right to, charge what they want to have people on there. Even if we don't like it, it's still fair that it's theirs. It's not mine. I didn't make Binance, so I can't say what their business policy should be. Which also, something like that could also enable a whale, like we were mentioning just a few minutes ago, to really help the project out anonymously. They could buy up nodes, just by themselves, stack it up, and something like that could really have an effect. So that's a neat thing. I think that was a great idea.
That's very clever. I think I can spend literally an hour discussing that specific topic, but perhaps that one for Junie to
Yeah,
discuss.
you should get them back on.
Yeah, I was just already thinking, what happens if people start to press yes? Then the whole thing gets off a little bit. But Wolfie, great to have you back on the show. It was a great discussion. As I said, you keep it real. Man, thank you again for your time, and love to get you back, but appreciate your time for today.
Yeah, hey man, thanks for inviting me. Have a great day, and yeah, let's see what happens.